To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Visitor. Matt McAllister had always prided himself on reading people. 20 years in construction management had taught him to spot trouble before it knocked down his door. But nothing could have prepared him for the sight of his 8-year-old son Tommy, standing motionless at the living room window, his small frame rigid with an unsettling anticipation. Someone special is coming, Tommy had whispered that evening, his voice carrying an eerie certainty that sent ice through Matt's veins. The boy hadn't touched his dinner, hadn't asked to watch cartoons, hadn't even acknowledged his mother Patricia when she tried to coax him into conversation. The black sedan appeared just as darkness settled over their suburban Cleveland street. Matt watched from the kitchen as a blonde woman emerged, her movements deliberate and purposeful. She wore an expensive coat that didn't belong in their middle-class neighborhood, and something about her posture suggested she knew exactly what she was doing. Tommy bolted for the front door before Matt could react. The lock clicked, and there stood the stranger, kneeling to meet his son's eyes with an intimacy that made Matt's blood run cold. "Hello, Tommy. It's time to tell Daddy the truth about who you really." "That's enough." Matt's voice cut through the evening air like a blade. He stepped between the woman and his son, his 6-foot frame casting a long shadow across the threshold. "Tommy, go to your room. Now." The boy obeyed without question, but not before exchanging a look with the woman that confirmed Matt's worst suspicions. This wasn't a random encounter. "Mr. McAllister," the woman said, rising gracefully. "I'm Kim Shields. I think we need to talk." "About what?" Matt's hand remained firmly on the door, ready to slam it shut. "About your son's biological father. About the lies your wife has been telling you for 9 years." The world tilted. Matt felt the familiar rage building in his chest. The same cold fury that had once made him legendary on construction sites for handling problems that others couldn't. But this wasn't a delayed shipment or an incompetent subcontractor. This was his family. Patricia. His voice boomed through the house. His wife appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale as moonlight. When her eyes found Kim Shields, she gripped the banister so hard her knuckles went white. "Hello, Patty," Kim said with a smile that held no warmth. "We really do need to talk." Chapter 2. The Foundation. Matt McAllister had built his life on solid ground. Born to a single mother in the rough neighborhoods of East Cleveland, he'd learned early that survival meant being harder than everyone else. By 16, he was working construction crews, saving every penny while other kids wasted time on dreams. By 25, he owned his first property. By 30, he was running crews for the biggest developments in Ohio. That's where he'd met Patricia Peterson, a secretary at the architectural firm designing his latest project. She was beautiful in a way that stopped traffic, blonde hair that caught sunlight like spun gold, green eyes that seemed to hold secrets, and a smile that made even hardened construction workers stumble over their words. Patricia had been different from the women in his neighborhood. She spoke softly, dressed elegantly, and carried herself with a refinement that Matt found intoxicating. She'd grown up in the suburbs, attended college, and dreamed of a life filled with nice things and peaceful evenings. "You're going to be somebody important," she told him on their third date, tracing her finger along his calloused hands. "I can feel it." Matt had proposed 6 months later with a ring that cost him 3 months' salary. Their wedding was everything Patricia had dreamed of: white dress, country club reception, honeymoon in Hawaii. He'd given her the suburban house, the new car, the promise of security that her father's abandonment had taught her to crave. Tommy had arrived a year later, a healthy baby with Patricia's blonde hair and green eyes. Matt had held his son for the first time in the hospital room, feeling a love so fierce it actually frightened him. This tiny human was his legacy, his chance to be the father he'd never had. "He's perfect," Patricia had whispered from the hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. "Our perfect little boy." Matt had worked 18-hour days to provide for them, building McAllister Construction from a 2-man operation into a company that employed 40 people. He'd sacrificed sleep, social life, and sometimes his health to ensure Patricia and Tommy had everything they needed. But now, standing in his living room with Kim Shields' words echoing in his mind, Matt realized he'd been building on sand. Every memory felt tainted, every sacrifice suddenly meaningless. The rage that had always been his strength was threatening to consume everything he'd worked to create. 9 years, he said quietly, more to himself than to the two women watching him. 9 years of lies. Kim pulled out a manila envelope from her purse. The DNA test results are all here, Mr. McAllister. Tommy's biological father is Jerry Bradshaw. He's been having an affair with your wife since before Tommy was born. Patricia finally found her voice. Matt, please let me explain. Don't. The single word carried such finality that both women stepped back. Don't say another goddamn word until I decide what I'm going to do about this. Chapter 3. The Revelation. The living room fell silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock Patricia had insisted they buy for their 5th anniversary. Matt stared at the DNA test results, the clinical language making his worst nightmare official. Tommy McAllister was not his biological son. The boy he'd loved, protected, and planned his entire future around was another man's child. How long have you known? Matt's voice was deadly calm. Kim glanced at Patricia, who seemed to have turned to stone. I've suspected for years. Jerry is my ex-husband. When I found his letters to Patricia, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Letters. Matt looked up from the papers. Love letters. Promises to leave his wife and run away together. Plans for their future with Tommy. Kim's voice carried a bitter edge. Jerry Bradshaw is a coward who couldn't commit to anything, including his affair with your wife. Patricia finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Matt, I never meant for this to happen. Jerry and we were friends first. You were working so much, and I was lonely. Stop. Matt set the papers down with careful precision. I don't want to hear excuses. I want facts. When did it start? 3 months before our wedding. Patricia admitted, the words tumbling out like a confession in church. We ran into each other at a coffee shop. He was going through a divorce, and I was stressed about the wedding planning. It was just comfort at first. Matt's hands clenched into fists. 3 months before their wedding. While he'd been working overtime to pay for her dream ceremony, she'd been fucking another man. While he'd been planning their honeymoon, choosing the house, designing their future, she'd been planning a betrayal that would span nearly a decade. And Tommy, I hoped he was yours. The timing was close enough that I convinced myself. But you knew he might not be. It wasn't a question. Patricia nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes. Matt stood slowly, his body moving with the controlled precision of a man who'd learned to channel rage into action. Get out of my house. Matt, please. Both of you. Get out of my house before I do something we'll all regret. Kim gathered her purse and headed for the door. Mr. McAllister, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but you deserve to know the truth. Patricia remained frozen in place. Matt, this is my home too. Our home. We can work through this. Our home. Matt's laugh was harsh and empty. Nothing in this house is ours, Patricia. Nothing has been ours for 9 years. You made sure of that. What about Tommy? He's still the same little boy you've raised. Tommy is Jerry Bradshaw's son. You made that choice long before he was born. Matt moved toward the stairs, then paused. You have until tomorrow morning to pack your things and leave. Take the boy with you. You can't throw out your own son. He's not my son. The words exploded from Matt with such force that Patricia stumbled backward. He never was my son. You and Jerry Bradshaw made sure of that. As Matt climbed the stairs, he heard Patricia sobbing in the living room below. But the sound triggered no sympathy, no urge to comfort her. The man who had once loved her enough to sacrifice everything was gone, replaced by someone far more dangerous. In his bedroom, Matt pulled out his laptop and began making notes. Jerry Bradshaw. Kim had mentioned he was divorced, but that didn't mean Matt couldn't find him. In construction, you learned that every building had a weak point. Every structure could be brought down if you knew where to apply pressure. Patricia and Jerry had chosen to destroy his life with lies and betrayal. Now Matt would show them what real destruction looked like. And unlike them, he would do it with his eyes wide open, accepting every consequence of his choices. The war had begun. Chapter 4. The Hunter. Matt McAllister had always believed in thorough preparation. By dawn, he'd compiled a dossier on Jerry Bradshaw that would have impressed a private investigator. 42 years old, divorced father of 2 teenage daughters, worked as a sales manager for a medical supply company based in Akron. Currently living in a rented apartment on the west side of Cleveland, driving a 3-year-old Honda Civic with payments 2 months behind. Patricia had left early that morning with Tommy and 2 suitcases, her face puffy from crying. She tried one last time to reach him, standing in the doorway with their son hiding behind her legs. "Matt, please, can't we at least talk about custody arrangements for Tommy? He's scared and confused." "Tommy can visit his biological father," Matt had replied without looking up from his coffee. "I'm sure Jerry will be thrilled to finally meet his son properly." The sound of the front door closing had been the most satisfying noise Matt had heard in years. Now, sitting in his truck outside Jerry's apartment complex, Matt studied his target's morning routine. 7:15, Jerry emerged in a wrinkled shirt and crooked tie, clutching a travel mug and checking his phone. He looked exactly like what he was, a middle-aged man who'd made too many mistakes and was running out of second chances. Matt followed Jerry to his office, noting the route, the timing, the stops for gas and coffee. Information was power, and power was what Matt needed to execute his plan properly. At Bradshaw's office building, Matt watched his target struggle with a broken elevator, sweating as he climbed 4 flights of stairs. Jerry was soft, weak, the kind of man who made promises he couldn't keep and took things that didn't belong to him. "Excuse me." Matt approached the receptionist with his most professional smile. "I'm Matt McAllister from McAllister Construction. I have a meeting with Jerry Bradshaw about a potential project." The young woman brightened. "Oh, Mr. Bradshaw will be so excited. He's been hoping for more construction clients. Let me buzz him." Within minutes, Jerry appeared in the lobby, his face eager and desperate. Matt studied him carefully. Average height, thinning brown hair, nervous energy. This was the man who'd stolen 9 years of his life. "Mr. McAllister, thank you so much for considering our services." Jerry's handshake was weak, sweaty. "I understand you might have some needs for medical supplies on your construction sites?" "Potentially," Matt replied. "Why don't we discuss it over lunch? I prefer to do business face-to-face." They met at a restaurant downtown, Jerry practically vibrating with excitement about the potential contract. Matt let him talk, studying his mannerisms, his tells, his weaknesses. Jerry was a man drowning in debt and desperation, grabbing at any lifeline. "So what kind of volume are we talking about?" Jerry asked, leaning forward eagerly. "That depends," Matt said carefully. "How well do you know Patricia Peterson?" Jerry's face went white. His hand trembled as he reached for his water glass. "I what?" "Patricia McAllister, actually. My wife. The mother of your son." Matt's voice remained conversational, but his eyes had gone cold as winter. "The woman you've been fucking for 9 years while I raised your child." Jerry started to stand, but Matt's hand clamped down on his wrist with crushing force. "Sit down, Jerry. We're not finished talking. Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" Matt's laugh was soft and dangerous. "Jerry, trouble is what you had when you couldn't make your car payments. What you have now is much worse." Jerry slumped back in his chair, his face ashen. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something very clearly." Matt leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "You took 9 years of my life. You stole my marriage, corrupted my wife, and made me love a child who was never mine. Those are debts that need to be paid." "I'll disappear," Jerry said quickly. "I'll move away, change jobs, you'll never see me again." "Oh, Jerry." Matt's smile was predatory. "You're not going anywhere. In fact, you're going to help me with a little project. Think of it as community service." Chapter 5, The Architect of Pain. Matt spent the next week learning everything about Jerry Bradshaw's pathetic existence. The man was drowning in debt from his divorce, behind on child support, and desperately trying to maintain relationships with his 2 teenage daughters who barely tolerated his weekend visits. His ex-wife, Sandra Bradshaw, had remarried a successful lawyer and made no secret of her contempt for Jerry's failures. But it was Jerry's relationship with Patricia that revealed the most useful information. Matt had installed tracking software on Patricia's phone months ago, a precaution he'd taken when she'd started working late too often. Now those tools showed him everything. The desperate texts, the promises to finally leave their respective spouses, the plans that never materialized because Jerry was too weak to follow through. Patricia was staying at her sister Kim's house, but the arrangement was clearly temporary. Kim had her own agenda. She wanted Jerry to suffer for the humiliation of his cheating, and she was willing to use Patricia's situation to make that happen. Matt's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Matt, please can we talk? Tommy keeps asking when he can come home. This is destroying him." Instead of responding, Matt forwarded the message to Jerry with a note. Your son is asking about his home. Maybe it's time you stepped up. Jerry's response came within minutes. Please don't involve the kid in this. He doesn't deserve to pay for our mistakes. Our mistakes? Matt typed back. The only mistake I made was trusting my wife. The only mistake Tommy made was being born to a coward and a liar. That evening, Matt received a call from his lawyer, Brett Randall, a college friend who'd built a successful practice handling messy divorces. Matt, I got your message about filing for divorce. We need to discuss strategy. With a child involved, this could get complicated. It's not complicated, Matt replied. I want full custody terminated. I want Patricia out of the house permanently. And I want Jerry Bradshaw to take responsibility for his son. Wait, slow down. What do you mean terminated custody? DNA test proves Tommy isn't mine. I want nothing to do with him. Brett was quiet for a long moment. Matt, I understand you're angry, but the courts look at these situations differently. You've been Tommy's father for 8 years. Legally and emotionally, that creates obligations. I didn't create those obligations. Jerry Bradshaw and my lying wife did. Matt's voice was ice cold. I want them both to face the consequences of their choices. What aren't you telling me, Matt? Matt smiled, though Brett couldn't see it. I'm telling you exactly what I want legally. Anything else is my business. After ending the call, Matt pulled out his laptop and began typing. By morning, he'd have everything in place for the next phase of his plan. Jerry and Patricia thought they could steal years of his life and walk away unscathed. They were about to learn the difference between forgiveness and justice. The construction business had taught Matt that the most devastating collapses happen slowly, structural integrity compromised bit by bit until the whole building came down in a rush of concrete and steel. Jerry and Patricia's lives were about to experience their own controlled demolition. Matt's phone rang, Patricia again. This time he answered. What? Matt, Tommy won't stop crying. He wants to come home, wants to see you. Please, whatever's happening between us, don't punish him. Put Jerry on the phone. Jerry? He's not here. Don't lie to me, Patricia. I know he's there. Put him on the phone, or I hang up and you don't hear from me again. A moment later, Jerry's voice came through the speaker, shaky and desperate. Matt? Look, man, we need to figure out how to handle this situation. Here's how we handle it, Jerry. Tomorrow morning, you're going to your ex-wife's house. You're going to tell Sandra that you have a son you've been hiding for 8 years. You're going to explain that you need to start paying child support for him too. Are you insane? Sandra will destroy me. She'll turn my daughters against me. Your daughters deserve to know they have a brother. Tommy deserves to know he has a father. Matt's voice carried no emotion. Unless you prefer I handle the introductions myself. The line went quiet except for Jerry's panicked breathing. You have 24 hours, Jerry. After that, I start making phone calls. Chapter 6. The Foundation Cracks. Jerry Bradshaw stood on his ex-wife's front porch at 8 in the morning, his hands shaking as he pressed the doorbell. Through the window, he could see Sandra's new husband Martin reading the newspaper over coffee, living the comfortable life that Jerry had never been able to provide. Sandra answered the door in her robe, her face immediately hardening when she saw him. You're not supposed to be here until Friday. The girls are getting ready for school. Sandra, I need to talk to you. About something important. If this is about money again, I have another child. The words tumbled out before Jerry could stop them. A son. He's 8 years old. Sandra's face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, disbelief, then fury. What the hell are you talking about? During our divorce, I was involved with someone. She was married too. We thought it was over, but you had a child with someone else while we were still married? Sandra's voice rose to a shriek that brought Martin to the door. What's going on? Martin's presence made Jerry feel even smaller. Your deadbeat ex-husband apparently has another child he's been hiding. Sandra's eyes were blazing, while he was crying poverty and falling behind on support for our daughters. Jerry tried to explain about Tommy, about Patricia, about the years of secret meetings and broken promises. With each word, Sandra's expression grew colder, more calculating. So let me understand this, she said when he finished. You've been paying nothing to support this other child while struggling to pay for our daughters. The mother's husband was raising your son while you played house on weekends. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Sandra pulled out her phone. Girls, come down here. Now. 15-year-old Danielle and 13-year-old Casey appeared at the top of the stairs, sensing drama. They'd inherited their mother's sharp intelligence and their father's weak constitution, smart enough to understand when adults were destroying each other, too young to protect themselves from the fallout. "Tell them," Sandra commanded. "Tell your daughters they have a brother you've been hiding from them." Jerry looked at his daughters' faces and felt something break inside him. These girls were the only good things he'd ever done, and now he was about to lose them too. "Girls, I made some mistakes during the divorce. There's a little boy named Tommy who's your half-brother." Danielle, the older one, crossed her arms. "You cheated on Mom? It's complicated." "No, Dad, it's not complicated," Casey said, her voice surprisingly mature. "You cheated and had a baby and hid it from us." Sandra smiled with cold satisfaction. "Pack your things, Jerry. You're going to need to find somewhere else to live. And don't expect to see the girls again until you've sorted out this mess." "Sandra, please, you can't keep me from my daughters. Watch me." She turned to Martin. "Honey, could you call your lawyer friend? I think we need to discuss modifying custody arrangements." As Jerry walked back to his car, his phone buzzed with a text from Matt. "How did it go with the family reunion?" Jerry typed back with trembling fingers, "You've destroyed my life." Matt's response was immediate. "No, Jerry, you destroyed your own life. I'm just making sure everyone sees the damage." At the same time Sandra was discovering Jerry's secret, Patricia was having her own confrontation. Kim had grown tired of housing her sister and her nephew, and her patience had finally snapped over breakfast. "You need to face reality, Patty. Matt isn't taking you back. Jerry isn't leaving his job and kids to play house with you and Tommy. You're homeless with an 8-year-old child, and your options are running out." Tommy sat at the kitchen table, picking at his cereal, his young face reflecting confusion and sadness that broke Patricia's heart. He'd been asking for Matt every day, unable to understand why the only father he'd ever known had suddenly disappeared from his life. "Aunt Kim, when can we go home?" Tommy asked quietly. Kim looked at Patricia with cold eyes. "Tell him the truth, Patty. Tell him why you can't go home." "Tommy, sweetie, Mommy made some mistakes, and now we need to figure out where we're going to live. Can't you just say sorry to Daddy? He always forgives me when I say sorry." Patricia felt tears burning her eyes. "It's more complicated than that, baby." "No, it's not," Kim said sharply. "Your mommy lied to your daddy for a very long time, and now he doesn't want to live with liars anymore." "Kim," Patricia protested. "What?" "The kid needs to understand reality. You can't protect him from the consequences of your choices forever." Patricia's phone rang, Jerry's number. She answered desperately, hoping for some good news. "Patricia, we need to meet. Now. Everything's falling apart." "What happened?" "Sandra knows about Tommy. She's threatening to take my daughters away. Martin's talking about pressing charges for fraud or something. I think I'm going to lose everything." Patricia felt the last foundation of her world crumble. "Jerry, we can still make this work. We can move somewhere together, start fresh." "With what money? My ex-wife is going to destroy me in court. My daughters hate me. And your husband?" "Patricia, I think he's planning something worse than just divorce." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Matt McAllister isn't the kind of man who just walks away when someone hurts him. And we didn't just hurt him, we destroyed his entire life." As Patricia hung up the phone, she realized that Jerry was right. She'd lived with Matt for 9 years, had seen the cold efficiency with which he handled problems that threatened his business or his family. She'd always felt protected by that ruthlessness, never imagining it might one day be turned against her. Now she was about to discover what happened when Matt McAllister decided you were the problem that needed to be solved. Chapter 7. The Trap Springs. Matt had spent 3 weeks setting the stage for his final act. Every move had been calculated, every pressure point identified and exploited. Jerry was in free fall. His ex-wife had filed for emergency custody modification citing his pattern of deception and financial irresponsibility. His daughters refused to speak to him, and his boss was asking uncomfortable questions about his recent performance. Patricia was facing her own collapse. Kim had given her 1 week to find alternative housing. Her savings account was nearly empty, and Tommy's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic as the stability of his world continued to crumble. But Matt wasn't finished. Destruction was only half the equation. The other half was ensuring that his enemies understood exactly why they were suffering. He'd arranged to meet Jerry at a construction site outside the city, an unfinished office building that would provide the privacy needed for their final conversation. Jerry arrived looking like a man on the edge of a complete breakdown, unshaven, wearing the same clothes he'd had on the day before, his eyes darting around nervously. "What do you want, Matt?" Jerry's voice was hoarse. "Haven't you done enough damage?" Matt emerged from behind a concrete pillar, his hard hat and work boots making him look perfectly at home in the industrial setting. "Damage? Jerry, I haven't even started yet. Look, I know you're angry, but Patricia and I never met." "Stop." Matt's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Don't tell me what you meant. Tell me what you did." Jerry swallowed hard. We had an affair." "For how long?" 9 years, but 9 years. "And in those 9 years, how many times did you fuck my wife in my house?" Jerry's face went pale. "I don't know. How many times did you eat dinner at my table while I was working to support your son?" "Matt, please. How many times did you watch me play with Tommy, knowing he was your child, and say nothing?" Jerry was backing away now, but Matt matched his pace step for step. "I wanted to tell you, but Patricia said." "Patricia said what?" "That it was easier to let me be the fool? That it was more convenient to let me pay for everything while you played weekend father with your real daughters?" "It wasn't like that." Matt's laugh was harsh and empty. "It was exactly like that, Jerry. You took 9 years of my life and gave me nothing in return but lies. What do you want from me?" "I'll do anything. I want you to disappear." Matt pulled out an envelope and handed it to Jerry. "Inside are one-way bus tickets to Seattle. Cash for a fresh start. A new identity if you're smart about using it." Jerry stared at the envelope, confused. "I don't understand. You're going to get on that bus tonight. You're going to leave Cleveland and never come back. You're going to abandon Patricia and Tommy the same way you abandoned your responsibilities for 9 years. I can't leave my daughters. Your daughters already hate you. Patricia will figure out how to survive without you. She's stronger than you think. And Tommy, well, Tommy will learn what kind of man his real father is." Jerry opened the envelope with shaking hands. "This is insane. You can't just make people disappear." "I'm not making you disappear, Jerry. I'm giving you the choice to do it yourself. You can take the money and the tickets and start over somewhere else, or you can stay here and face the consequences of what happens when I run out of patience." "What consequences?" Matt smiled, and Jerry felt ice form in his veins. "Your ex-wife received an anonymous tip about offshore accounts you've been hiding. Completely false, of course, but by the time the IRS finishes auditing you, you'll be bankrupt and unemployable. Your daughters received a very detailed letter explaining how their father abandoned their half-brother for 8 years while crying poverty. And Patricia received a recording of our conversation last week where you admitted that you never loved her, just used her for sex while planning to eventually go back to your ex-wife." Jerry's knees buckled. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Check your phone, Jerry. I think you'll find your daughters have already read their letter." Jerry's phone showed 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages, none of them friendly. His oldest daughter's final message was just 4 words: "Don't ever contact us." "You've lost everything anyway, Jerry. I'm just offering you a chance to lose it somewhere else, where you won't be a constant reminder of your failures to the people you've hurt." Jerry stared at the bus tickets, his hands trembling. "What about Tommy? He's my son. Tommy stopped being your son the moment you decided to let another man raise him. You made that choice, Jerry. Now live with it." As Jerry stumbled toward his car, clutching the envelope, Matt felt no satisfaction, no sense of victory. There was only the cold certainty that justice had been served, that accounts had been balanced. The next phase would be more complicated. Patricia still believed she could salvage something from the wreckage of her marriage. She was about to learn that some betrayals were unforgivable, and some men never gave second chances. Chapter 8. The Final Reckoning. Patricia stood in the parking lot of the diner where Matt had agreed to meet her, clutching Tommy's hand and trying to summon courage she didn't feel. 3 days had passed since Jerry's disappearance. His landlord said he'd paid his lease in cash through the end of the month and vanished without a forwarding address. Tommy had cried himself to sleep every night since, asking for his daddy, the only father he'd ever known. Patricia's heart broke watching her son's confusion, but she was running out of options. Kim had made good on her threat to evict them, and Patricia's credit cards were maxed out from motel stays. Matt was already seated when they arrived, looking impeccable in his business suit despite the casual setting. He didn't stand when they approached, didn't acknowledge Tommy's shy wave, didn't offer any warmth in his expression. "Thank you for meeting us," Patricia said, sliding into the booth across from him. Tommy pressed against her side, sensing the tension. "You said it was urgent," Matt replied, his voice neutral. "I wanted to talk about Tommy. About us. About trying to salvage something from this mess." Matt's eyes fixed on hers with laser intensity. "What did you want to salvage, Patricia?" "Our family. I know I made terrible mistakes, but we can work through this. People forgive affairs all the time. We can get counseling, rebuild trust." "Affairs?" Matt's voice was soft, dangerous. "Is that what you call 9 years of systematic deception?" Tommy looked between the adults, picking up on the undercurrents he couldn't understand. "Daddy, are you still mad at Mommy?" Matt's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer the boy. Patricia leaned forward desperately. "Matt, look at him. Look at your son. Whatever happened between us, he doesn't deserve to lose his father. He's not my son." The words hit Tommy like a physical blow. His green eyes filled with tears as he processed what he'd heard. "What do you mean, Daddy? I am your son." Matt finally looked directly at the boy, and Patricia saw something flicker in his expression. Pain, maybe, or regret. But when he spoke, his voice remained steady. "Tommy, your real father is a man named Jerry Bradshaw. Your mother lied to both of us about who your daddy really is." "That's not true." Tommy's voice rose, drawing stares from other diners. "You're my daddy. You taught me to ride my bike. You read me stories. I did those things because I thought you were mine. But you're not. And I don't take care of children who aren't mine." Patricia felt her world collapse completely. "Matt, please. He's 8 years old. This isn't his fault." "No, it's not his fault. It's yours." Matt stood up, dropping a 20 on the table. "You made the choice to deceive me for 9 years. You made the choice to let me love a child who wasn't mine. You made the choice to destroy our marriage. Now you get to live with those choices. Where are we supposed to go? I don't have any money, any job. That's not my problem anymore." Matt's voice was final. "You should have thought about consequences before you decided to fuck another man for 9 years." Tommy was sobbing now, clinging to Patricia's arm. "Daddy, please don't leave us. I'll be good, I promise." For just a moment, Matt's composure cracked. Patricia saw him flinch at Tommy's words, saw his hands clench into fists. But then the mask was back in place, cold and unforgiving. "Tommy, I hope someday you understand that this isn't about you being good or bad. This is about your mother making choices that hurt everyone." He turned to walk away, then paused. "Patricia, there's a check waiting for you at my lawyer's office. Enough money to get you back on your feet somewhere else. Consider it severance pay for 9 years of services rendered." "Services rendered?" Patricia's voice cracked. "Matt, I loved you. I still love you." Matt turned back, his eyes empty of any warmth she'd ever seen there. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent 9 years letting another man's child call me daddy. If you loved me, you wouldn't have turned our entire marriage into a lie." He walked away without looking back, leaving Patricia and Tommy alone in the booth with their shattered world. Tommy continued crying, repeating, "Daddy, come back," until his voice was hoarse. Patricia held her son and felt the full weight of her choices crushing down on her. She'd gambled everything on the belief that love could survive anything, that family bonds were stronger than truth. But Matt McAllister was not a man who forgave betrayal, and she'd betrayed him in the deepest way possible. As she carried her exhausted son to their car, Patricia realized that Jerry had been right about one thing. Matt wasn't finished with his revenge. He'd taken everything from Jerry, driven him out of town like a biblical exile. But for Patricia, he'd chosen a different kind of punishment. He was going to let her live with the consequences of her choices, knowing that every day of struggling to raise Tommy alone would remind her of the life she'd destroyed. Every time Tommy asked about his daddy, every time she couldn't afford something her son needed, every time she looked in the mirror and saw what 9 years of lies had cost her, Matt would have his revenge. It was, Patricia realized, a far crueler punishment than simply destroying her. Matt McAllister was going to let her destroy herself. Chapter 9. The New Foundation. 6 months later, Matt McAllister stood in his completely renovated house, every trace of Patricia's presence erased and replaced. New furniture, new paint, new flooring, a clean slate that matched the new life he was building. The divorce had been finalized without contest. Patricia had taken the money and moved to Phoenix with Tommy, where her aunt had helped her find work as a receptionist. According to Brett, she'd sent one letter asking if Matt wanted updates about Tommy's adjustment to his new school, his new life. Matt had told Brett to return it unopened. Jerry Bradshaw had vanished completely. Matt's private investigator had tracked him as far as Seattle, then the trail went cold. His ex-wife Sandra had remarried and moved to Denver with her daughters and new husband. Even if Jerry tried to reconnect with his family, he'd find nothing but empty houses and forwarding addresses. Matt's business was thriving. Without the emotional turmoil of his crumbling marriage, he'd been able to focus completely on expansion. McAllister Construction now employed 60 people and had contracts lined up for the next 2 years. His phone buzzed with a text from his secretary. "Your 3 p.m. appointment is here." Matt adjusted his tie and walked to the conference room, where a young couple waited nervously. First-time homebuyers, probably, looking to build their dream house with a contractor who understood the importance of solid foundations. "Mr. and Mrs. Sampson? I'm Matt McAllister. Thank you for considering our company for your project." Corey Sampson stood to shake hands, his grip firm and honest. His wife Lynn smiled warmly, her hand protectively resting on her rounded belly, maybe 5 months pregnant. "We've heard amazing things about your work," Lynn said. "We want to build something that will last, something we can raise our children in." Matt spread the architectural plans across the table, pointing out load-bearing walls, foundation specifications, the careful engineering that would ensure their house stood strong for generations. "The most important thing," Matt explained, "is making sure your foundation is completely solid before you build anything else. If there are cracks or weaknesses in the foundation, eventually the whole structure will fail." Corey nodded seriously. "We understand. We want to do this right the first time." As Matt walked them through the construction timeline, he felt satisfaction in their eagerness, their commitment to building something honest and permanent. These were people who understood that some things, trust, family, integrity, were worth protecting at any cost. After the Sampsons left, Matt returned to his office and pulled out the final piece of paperwork from his divorce. A single document that had arrived that morning, delivered by courier from Patricia's lawyer in Phoenix. It was Tommy's birth certificate, officially amended to show Jerry Bradshaw as the father. The lie that had shaped 9 years of Matt's life had finally been legally corrected. Matt studied the document for a long moment, then fed it into his shredder. The past was dead and buried. The future belonged to people who understood the value of truth. His secretary knocked on the door. "Mr. McAllister? There's a call for you. A woman named Danielle Price says she saw your interview in Construction Weekly and wants to discuss a potential project." Matt picked up the phone, ready to talk about building something new, something real, something that would stand the test of time. "Matt McAllister speaking. How can I help you build your future?" As he talked specs and timelines with his potential new client, Matt felt the satisfaction of a man who'd learned to tell the difference between what was worth saving and what needed to be demolished. Some people believed in second chances, in forgiveness, in rebuilding on damaged foundations. Matt McAllister believed in starting over with solid ground. The conversation continued, filled with talk of blueprints and building codes, contracts and completion dates. Outside his window, a new housing development was taking shape, homes for families who would build their lives on honest foundations. Matt had learned the hard way that some betrayals were unforgivable, some lies too deep to overcome. Patricia and Jerry had chosen to build their relationship on deception, and that foundation had inevitably crumbled. But from the ruins of his destroyed marriage, Matt had built something stronger, a life based on truth, success earned through his own efforts, and the absolute certainty that he would never again mistake weakness for forgiveness. The phone call ended with a handshake deal for a $250,000 project. Matt hung up and returned to his plans, designing the kind of structures that would last forever, built on foundations that would never crack, never shift, never betray the trust of those who depended on them. Some men learned to forgive. Matt McAllister had learned something more valuable: how to build a life that didn't require forgiveness at all. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.